Oh man, that's so good. Practice curiosity, lead into community, see each person as an invitation to wonder.
Grief is not the absence of joy. Grief is the strongest memory of joy. So that there's more to humanity than what they can provide for you.
Art plus story equals trust.
Right.
Wow. Leadership raises people to the point of being beloved.
This is The Deep Dive with Jose St. Fard.
Welcome to the Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Jose St. Fard. This is a podcast for leaders, dreamers, and change makers. And today we have an incredible, amazing friend of mine, Kevin Spencer Wilson. Kevin Wilson is a digital storyteller. He's a cultural bridge builder. He's the author of The Way of Chai, Recipes for a Meaningful Life. He's also been called the CEO of Chai, and I can't wait to get into that. But his real superpower is helping people lead with presence in a world addicted to pressure. And so I can't wait to get into the conversation with him. And we're going to be unpacking what does it mean to lead well with resilience, to lead well when you need to reinvent yourself because of circumstances that come, how to build resilience when everything feels uncertain, and how to slow down long enough to actually lead from soul and not survival. So Kevin, for those who don't know you, who may be unfamiliar with your work, tell us a little bit about who you are and what's your story.
Yeah. First of all, excited to be here with you. This is a long time coming to have a
Yes.
chat with my boy Jose here,
Yes.
Pastor Jose.
Yes.
Story is that I was born in Sri Lanka, beautiful
Okay.
land of Sri Lanka. I lived there till I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Then moved to the Middle East. Lived in a country called Oman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was my high school years. And then I came to the States when I was 18.
Okay.
And yeah, so ever since I was 18, I've been here in the United States. But then even during this time, in the last 15 years, did some traveling here and there. So I guess travel and just like different cultures has been a core part of my life, a consistent thread throughout my life.
Yeah.
Hence my moniker on Instagram or social media presence, Cross Culture Kev.
That
Right.
makes so much sense. So tell me, in your early story, is there a moment in your life growing up in Sri Lanka, maybe transitioning to the Middle East or to the U.S. that said to you, this part of my life is going to be important later. This something clicked that said, you know what? I'm going to use this.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great question. And it's also a tough question to answer too, because as someone who is who has a lifelong habit of recording moments. I've been journaling since like 12 years old.
12?
Yeah. Consistently.
Like, what do you mean journal? Like paper, pen, video?
By journaling, I mean the art and science and habit of externalizing your thoughts. So just taking things that are over here, processing, and then putting it out into the world, right? So I've always done that. I think for me, it's been therapy, mostly therapeutic for me. Because at an early age, I just realized like there was just so much chatter and noise going on inside, and I was like, you know what, I need to kind of have a system to make sense of it. And so my youth pastor, as growing up, kept telling me, hey, he said a lot of different things, but the one thing that I remember, and the one thing that I also tell my youth, everybody, like as a life hack, is he said that the shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. The shortest pencil is longer than the longest.
That's good.
Right.
The shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that changed my life, to be honest. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Wow.
Right. So I think to answer your question, there's so many different moments, but if there was maybe one or two moments, I think the one that comes to my mind immediately is my transition from Oman to the United States. My family applied for the green card. It's called the DV1 lottery visa program.
Okay.
At the time, the United States offered this opportunity for people outside of the United States to get entry to the United States. The immigration policy was a lot different back then. This is early 2000s than it is now. So my parents applied for it, but then even though all four of them applied for it, the applications get considered as single applications. Meaning that if my mom's application gets picked, then then my dad's application may not get picked.
Wow.
So you don't go, even though you apply as a family, you don't get
in as a family. Wow. So I'm sure a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, they don't. And it just so happened that out of all four of my family members, including myself, I was the only one who got picked.
Wow.
So when I was 18 years old, I got a notification saying that I was supposed to appear at this interview at the U.S. Embassy in Oman.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I went from not knowing what I was supposed to do in high school to getting on a plane and coming to the United States and trying to figure life out.
Wow.
So I remember coming to October 28, 2008, Dulles International Airport in Virginia, 2 suitcases in a backpack, $200 in my pocket, and I knew nobody.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I had nobody, no family, no friends, and in 2008, when I was 18 years old, I had to start the process of rediscovering myself, reinventing myself in an entirely different country. So that was probably the most pivotal moment of my life.
Yeah.
So far.
And what you're talking about, this idea of reinvention, is something that leaders have to go through constantly. And especially in a world that's constantly changing, we have to reinvent ourselves in order to sustain long-term leadership. And so there's just something about being able to come into a new culture, coming into a new space, and then saying, okay, how am I going to do this? And then figuring it out. Like that is wild. So I want to know, what is it that gave you the capacity to reinvent instead of laying back and going, I don't know what to do. Someone needs to come save me. Like right. There's a lot of leaders that are like, I don't know how to do this. This is too much. But somehow you at 18 get up, go into this country, and you're going, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we're going to do it. And then you're figuring it out along the way. What is it that you can tell a leader right now who's in that process right now? And
I'm reminded of this proverb from the continent of Africa. I don't know exactly which country it's from. It says the fish knows the beauty of water once it's outside of it. The fish knows the beauty of water once it's outside of the water.
Wow.
There's another story we're talking about. 2 fishes were on this fishbowl, and one fish was having a conversation with the other fish, and one fish was asking the other fish, hey, how's the water? And the other fish was just like, what the heck is water? So the principle kind of behind this is the idea that you have your comfort zone. That's your fishbowl.
Yeah.
Once you're outside of the comfort zone, once you're outside of your fishbowl, and my fishbowl up until when I was 18 was my Sri Lankan culture, my Middle Eastern culture, if I want to call it that way, my Christian upbringing, all these things, my parental upbringing, my Tamil, that's just the language that I speak, all the intricacies that come with it. That was my fishbowl. The moment I stepped out of that, it was when I realized, oh wow, this is my culture. This is what it means to be Sri Lankan. This is what it means to be Middle Eastern. So when you're in that fishbowl, your comfort zone, you might not recognize it. So as a leader, as you're transitioning into a new space, you have a choice. You can either be like, oh, there's so many limitations. There's so many things that I don't know. There's so much uncertainty. Yeah. I would say befriend your uncertainty. Have a curious outlook on the situation, on your new circumstances right now, new context right now. And when you realize that the new context that you're in is an opportunity for you to rediscover yourself, to figure out, to see new sides and aspects of yourself, you get to now have a chance to befriend your story. You get a chance to actually get to know parts of who you are that you didn't realize that they were there before. The other thing that I remember is from this German theologian. His name is Paul Tillich, and he has. And I love Paul Tillich. And he has this. And I'm rephrasing what he said, and this is a very provocative line. And he basically says that suffering is like a sledgehammer to your soul. Suffering is a sledgehammer to your soul. That once suffering comes to your life, and somebody puts a sledgehammer to all aspects of who you are. When the dust settles down, you'll realize that once the walls are broken down, that there was an attic that you didn't realize that there was there. There was another room that you realized that there wasn't there. There was depth. There was cavities in the house that you didn't realize that you were there. So especially when you're going through a new situation, when you're leaning into a new circumstance, you are going to suffer. You are going to suffer. There's no way around it. But the only way out of it is through. So when you go through that experience, you'll realize, oh man, all these things that are there as part of your life. Sometimes it's things like pain and suffering that gives you more awareness to it. And then C.S. Lewis talks about it. He says that sometimes pain is the megaphone that God uses to arouse a deaf world.
He says, God whispers, through our joys. Through our pleasures, but he shouts through our pain.
Right. So those two things I would say. So that's number one: to befriend uncertainty, to practice curiosity.
Practice curiosity.
And then also to lean into community. Lean into community. There are people. When you look at people in new situations, you can look at them in two different ways. Either you can look at them as instruments that you can use to level up your own story or your survival, whatever it is. Or you can look at them as invitations to wonder. You can look at them as like, wow, like you're amazing. Like you represent not just the things that you could potentially do for me, but you represent a world, world of possibilities. And when I look back at my life in the last 15, 16 years, it's so interesting to me. Like, it's not those big best friend relationships, the core, like, powerful relationships, friendships that I've formed that have really changed my life. Sometimes it's that acquaintance that you helped you out with a bus ticket that you didn't have money to pay for your bus. It was maybe the one person who was behind you, but you didn't have money for that Starbucks chai, and then the person's like, "Yo, I'll pay for you." It's those moments that become those loose moments that become strong moments later on. Those are the ones that make a really big difference. So the third thing is to actually look at people not as instruments, but as invitations to wonder.
I love that. I love that. Practice curiosity. Lead into community. See each person as an invitation to wonder. Oh man, that's so good. I want to lean into this idea of suffering. Leadership pain is something that we don't talk about enough. And I think in the cultural context of Christianity, we actually shy away from suffering, whereas I think in other Eastern religions they lean into the idea of suffering. And I remember it wasn't until I studied Buddhism that I was just studying it just to understand from a cross-cultural context, that I was just wowed by how much suffering is the foundation of Buddhism and in this practicing of learning to be content in suffering. Then I went back to Christianity. I go, wow, it's all over the place. Like it's all over the place, that it is through our suffering. Jesus, is said to be the pioneer of our faith, who was perfected through suffering. So I want to ask you, because you said when you're transitioning, suffering is inevitable. What's one moment of suffering that taught you more than any success you've had? Is there one place you can invite us into?
I would say the one that I remember with vivid memory right now is the passing of my grandmother. That was probably the first time I really felt the loss of a story from my life. Up until that point, I mean, I grieved the death of friends, and even some extended family members. But being in the United States by myself, whilst the rest of my family is in Sri Lanka, and then I get the news, hey, Pati died. Pati is grandmother in my language, Tamil. That just broke me in ways that I cannot explain. And so that was painful, and it took some time to go through that. But you know what? I've since then, like I've I've had the chance to kind of maybe reframe grief. For me, grief is not the absence of joy. Grief is the strongest memory of joy. So,
wow,
let me unpack that.
You gotta unpack that.
Let me unpack that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's a lot. Yeah. So, what do I mean by that? Right. So, I mean that people think that grief is the loss of joy.
Yeah.
So you have joy and you have grief.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see joy as the antithesis of grief.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah.
I don't think that anymore. When I think about my grandmother, when I think about even those people who have been there but should have been there, and who have been connected to me, I feel a tremendous sense of joy. A joy, because it's just a sense of gratitude. So grief for me is this deep emotion of joy, but it feels like pain, it feels like loss, but it is a tremendous feeling of just looking outward and saying thank you. Thank you for the presence of this person in my life. Thank you for the presence of this person in how they've shaped my story going so far, and it has completely changed it moving forward.
It's an extension of that person's present memory,
right?
And you're pulling in the joy that you once experienced into the now. And so perhaps the reason why it feels painful is that you're longing for that joy.
Right. And then what does that mean for leadership, right? Because that's your initial question, which is like, hey, how do you reframe pain and grief? And for me as a leader, the grief has taught me to honor life, to honor the spaces that I'm in. Too often as leaders, we go through spaces thinking about, how can I leverage this space? For my benefit. How
for
can
my
I
vision.
How can I capitalize on this relationship? Or that community? Or that social situation? Or this thing for my elevation? And I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing. I think as leaders, we have a capacity to be ambitious. There is this innate need and desire to expand. And with that expansion, especially for visionaries, there's this tendency to kind of look outward and look at things from like a 60,000 feet level, which is great. I think people are wired that way. Especially for those people, especially if you're wired that way. I think it'll be good for us to have reminders that sometimes people are people. People are not machines. People are not something that we can use. People are created in the image of God. And whether or not they prove their worth and their value to me in this situation, they're still loved, seen, and known by God. But your leadership will elevate when you now see them as seen and known and loved by you, regardless of their utility to you. So things like grief and pain and suffering reminds you that there's more to humanity than what they can provide for you. No, that's not their, our ultimate, let's put it this way, our ultimate trajectory as children of God, if for those of us who claim
faith,
who have their faith, and the way of Jesus informs my faith. The ultimate trajectory in life is not towards usefulness. The ultimate trajectory is towards belovedness. And I'm borrowing this language from my friend Justin. He wrote an amazing book. Can't remember the name of that book, but it's not towards this like, how useful can I get? How useful can I get to my wife, my spouse, my children, my loved ones, my church, my whatever. No. That's all good. That's all good. It's fine. I'm Enneagram 3. If you're those who are, you know the Enneagram. I'm very much geared towards the usefulness part of the equation. But what I need to remember is like, man, that's not the trajectory. My trajectory is belovedness at every single point of life. The more that I know that I'm beloved by God, I work from acceptance, not towards acceptance.
That's so good.
Validation is my entry point.
That's so good.
It's not my destination.
That's so good. Because, I mean, and that's something that I think has really shaped my theology on God, is this idea that we were created because we were loved, not to be loved. We were created because we were loved. And because we were loved, we came to be. Therefore, the very fact that I exist, any human being, we exist because we are beloved already. What I love about the way you do leadership is you're leading through storytelling. You're sharing stories. Tell me the moment you realized that chai was going to be the way you're going to tell stories. Like, I mean, who thinks of that?
Yeah.
I'm going to use chai. And it's a very hard thing to do, by the way. I was like, I love making lemonade. I'm going to start making videos. It is not easy. So I don't know like how you do it, but it is not easy. And you do it incredibly well. So tell me, when did that start? How did that happen? How did you come up with that concept?
Yeah. So if you're listening for the first time, I make chai online. Go by Cross Culture Kev. We have a community about 500,000 people online.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's this interesting community where we're talking about meaningful living through the perspective of chai and storytelling, as you mentioned. Yeah. So when did I realize this? So I think I'd go back to maybe April 2020. This was just the pandemic has just started, and that's when I got into TikTok. I've been making content since I was 14 years old. Just always loved the art and practice of creating things, putting it out in the world. Loved that. So I had a YouTube channel first, and then got into TikTok because my youth kept telling me, hey, you should get on TikTok. It's a big thing. It's the latest thing. You should get into it.
Thank God for the youth.
And I'm like, yeah. So I was like, I don't know. It's like a youth thing. It's for you guys, not for me.
Yeah.
But I got onto it, and I was really impressed by its content distribution system.
Wow.
Because I'm a content creation nerd.
Yeah.
Like I love just
the
the intricacies of looking at it. And I was like, all right, let me just try a couple of things here and see what happens. Zero expectations. So one day I decided to record my chai making. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a South Asian beverage.
Yeah.
A lot of people know in this country, and by this country I mean in the United States, if you're listening, as chai tea, which is a redundancy.
Because chai means tea.
Because chai literally means tea. If you take anything from this conversation, maybe that might be.
Stop saying TT.
Right, exactly. And so I made the video, and the video went viral. People started to ask me questions. It's like, oh, wow, how do you make this? I thought it was like a powder. I thought this was like a formula. This it's from Starbucks now. Yeah. So I started to educate people about making tea.
Wow.
That's it. Nothing else.
Wow.
But then I decided to entertain some questions that were in the comments.
Wow.
Some of the questions were, hey, you're a pastor. That's in your bio.
Yeah.
And they started to say things like, I left the church when I was a teen.
Wow.
But I would come to your church.
Wow.
I'm like,
wow.
First of all, I'm really humbled. Thank you. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
And then I started to answer some questions, pastoral questions. And then people started to ask more questions. And then I decided, you know what? Let me start to share more stories from my life, my South Asian experience. And so I started sharing my story about my grandfather, my tata, in my vernacular, in Tamil. I made a video about how my grandfather was a tea plantation worker during the British colonial period in Sri Lanka. And he was a Kanakapillai, meaning he was an accountant in the tea estate. It's a prestigious position that's only given to certain members of the tea plantation class, which was the marginalized class in Sri Lanka. There's the tea plantation workers, and then there's the British. And then everybody else who's not part of that is the middle management. Wow. So my tata was one of the members of the marginalized community. So he had a lot of trust with the British, a lot of trust with the Sri Lankan community, and so they gave him leadership opportunities. And eventually he worked his way up to the ranks where he became the leader of his little tea estate group, only answering to the British during the time. So I started to share stories about my grandfather and what he meant for me, what his legacy means for me. And then just saying that the reason why I make tea is it's a way for me to connect with my roots. Then the comments started to really flood. because there were people who were saying stuff like, "Hey, man, I'm South Asian American.
Wow.
I've been in this country for this long.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say anything like what you said."
Wow.
And a lot of comments are like, "Yo, me too.
Wow.
Me too.
Wow.
I thought I was the only one."
You're building a community.
So again, was not the goal. Was not the community. Was not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal was to share honest, real stories without no expectations.
Yeah.
And then I realized that when you have your art and you infuse that art with your story, it builds trust.
Wow.
Okay.
Art plus story equals trust.
Right.
Wow.
And a story is a tale of transformation. That's the difference between a story and an anecdote. An anecdote is just a scene.
Wow.
Like I came to record a podcast with Jose.
Yeah.
That is an anecdote. That's a scene.
Yeah.
But a story would be, I'm coming up with a story on the spot right now.
Yeah.
A story would be, I was an undergrad. I was a seminary student at Andrews.
Yeah.
And my friend David Kilatan took me to his Bolingbrook church.
Yeah.
And I was at church one day and I was listening to the sermon and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I've never heard an Adventist pastor preach a sermon like this.
Wow.
And inspired me, and I wanted to talk to this person. His pastor's name was Jose St. Fard.
Wow.
And he was one of the people during my time as a theology undergrad where I realized, man, there can be different shades and colors and textures to what we call Adventism. It's like, wow, this is cool. To have a conversation with Jose right now is a full circle moment where we are sharing stories. Yeah. That's really nice. There's a story right there. There's a story arc.
Yeah.
And the moment of transformation was a moment of gratitude that we share now as colleagues now.
Yeah.
That distance as not, it's not white anymore.
Yeah.
It's we are the same.
Yeah.
So that's a story. The story is a tale of transformation. It's a tale of change.
I love that. I love that.
So every piece
you
of
just gave a masterclass on story.
Yeah, and so that's how it happened, and I started to share more stories.
Yeah.
And more people started to join the community.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think what it does, especially when you're online, when you're in that space, there are influencers from all over the globe. And often those who are part of the global majority are not represented in those spaces. And so, and I say global majority instead of using the word minority, because, most of the world, brown, black, and often we don't see those people in the space of influencer. And so I think what was beautiful with your stories, all of a sudden there are people online who are going, hey, that guy, I share that story. I know that story. I know that space. And now you're giving voice. So it's no longer just your story. It becomes our story.
Yep. 100%.
And now I feel belonging. Goes back to this idea of being beloved, right? This is what leadership does. Leadership raises people to the point of being beloved and belonging.
That reminds me of, man, the one thing that I would tell people, especially if you are someone from the global majority, I love how you put it that way, and you are a leader in your space.
Yeah.
And you are in spaces where there are people who don't look like you, think like you, talk like you, act like you, who don't have an accent.
Yeah.
The greatest blessing that you can give to your team, the greatest blessing that you can provide to the people who God has entrusted to you, is the befriending of your own story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the art and the practice of really learning who you are.
Yeah.
In the light of love.
Yeah.
And learning about what makes you you. Getting to know who you are, your instrument so well, so that when you walk into the rooms, when you walk into spaces, your mind is not preoccupied with what would they think about me?
Yeah.
What are they going to say about me?
Yeah.
No, you're walking into saying like, no, I know who I am.
Yeah.
I know who I am. I know whose I am.
Yeah. That's
because here's the
important.
thing: even if you listen, even if you're not a follower of God, even if you don't believe in God and things like that, it's not a matter of if you worship; it's a matter of what you worship.
Yeah,
you're always worshiping something.
Yeah.
We are worshiping beings. All of us do. We worship something. If it's not God, it's either sex. If it's not sex, it's either money. It's not money.
Drugs,
it's either
power,
drugs, or whatever power, whatever. So everybody's worshiping. So. Yeah, the greatest blessing that you can give to your leadership is the befriending of your own story.
Yeah, loving yourself.
Yeah, loving yourself, accepting yourself, and learning to really just to learn how to see yourself as an instrument. And it's like I'm thinking about the illustration of music. Like you're a piano, you're a violin, you're a cello, and you can think about the maestros of music, right? You think about Beethoven's and the Chopins and the Mozarts, and it's like, man, it's just one instrument. It's not different instruments. It's just one instrument, but they went deep.
Yeah,
they knew it so much, so that when they started playing, people are not like, oh no, that's not how you play. They were like, no.
This is how you play.
Gave a new blueprint.
Yeah.
You give a new blueprint of how to play.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going to happen to your leadership. That's exactly what's going to happen to your influence.
Yeah.
When you know you so well.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's amazing. And that's something I remember us talking about, and I've entered into that journey because for most of my life, I've learned to assimilate into the cultures that I've been in order to survive. And learning to fall in love with yourself is a process, and fall in love with your story is a process, and adopting and embracing that story, and knowing that story has value for where you are.
The world is not designed for innovators.
Yeah.
No. So not just let's just even go down a little bit. Let's talk institutional level.
Yeah.
The highest priority for an institution is the perpetuation of the institution.
Yes. Systems are built to maintain themselves.
Male maintenance, and this is your neck of the woods. This is your wheelhouse. You know more about this than I do. Yeah. So if that's the case, if systems are built for the sake of preserving certain goals and metrics, if institution exists for the sake of the preservation of the institution, then people are just collateral damage.
Yeah.
They can be.
Yeah.
And the institution will value the person or the people as long as, insofar as they contribute to the goals.
Yeah. To the current metrics.
And the current metrics of the institution.
Disruptors are not loved.
Say it. They're not allowed.
No.
So you owe it to yourself. So that's why it's going to be such an uphill battle. Right, for people like us, people, and if you're listening, if you're a global majority, I love that. I'm going to see that for you, a global majority leader. That's good. You have to embrace that.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to embrace inconvenience. You have to embrace this idea of not fitting in. You just have to. Whatever you've thought all your life as liabilities are now your greatest assets. Your accent. Your skin tone. Your vernacular, the way you say that word, the way you preach, the way you write, these are all superpowers.
Superpowers. And there are other people waiting for you to rise.
Yes.
And that's what I've had to learn. You know, I pastor a church called Oasis Christian Center here in Vancouver, Washington, and we're in Oregon right now, but in Vancouver, Washington, and one of the things that have come out of my experience there is actually the more I lean into who I am, the more people go, I love that. It's so far from their regular experience, and it's so far from what they. And then there are people I lean into so many things that for most of my life I called liabilities. I have ADHD. You know, I'm very active. I'm a visionary. I love big things. I'm an innovator. I'm a change maker. And most of my life, I've tried to tiptoe around it. And now I'm realizing, now that I'm 40, I realize, no, if people don't like it, they weren't for me. And I have my tribe, and I have to lean into my tribe.
Right.
And the more I've done it, the more people I realize, oh, they love my tribe. Right. You know? But I think as a leader, when it comes to dealing with pain, dealing with resilience, and dealing with reinventing yourself, we often think reinvention means modification for acceptance.
Okay.
I'm modifying in order to be embraced.
Okay, yeah.
And reinvention does not mean the loss of your own story.
Right. Yeah.
It just means adopting your story to that new context.
Right.
That's a totally different thing.
100%. And as you're talking about this, I'm reminded of this phrase that I see a lot of times, when especially in spaces of color, where they're talking about leadership, influence, and growth. This phrase is "take up space." Okay. Now, let me say this. For the longest time, when I first heard that, I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" And so I found out that means that when you walk into a room, take up the space, take up space. Because why? Because that's space that was not given to you or people who look like us for a long time. So take up space. And so that's what I did, right? And so I walk into rooms and do the things because I'm going to take up space. Now, in my years of, which is not too many, but in my few years of just trying to do intercultural work, cross-cultural work, either online or offline, maybe there's a different, maybe that might be an alternative way of thinking about that, reimagining this concept of taking up space. Especially if you are somebody who is part of like the global majority or minority group, right? Instead of taking up space, maybe steward your space.
Yes, I love that.
Right, I love that. So language is important. Language is important.
Yes.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
There's a big difference.
There's a big difference. Well, let me ask you first. What is the difference, if in your mind? Before I say what I want to say, between taking up space and stewarding your space.
I think for me, taking up space, there's a spirit of arrogance that comes into it. That I come in and I go, this wasn't given to me, so now I have the power, right? Whereas stewarding that space is managing both my own expectations and the expectations of others, and going, I'm coming in and I have a gift and I have a presence, but I also understand that there are people who may not know how to manage me, how to deal with me. And I think it's a spirit of humility versus a spirit of arrogance. And I think it's both of them. Taking up space is not the only way to be true to who you are. You can be true to who you are, but be cognizant that there are other people and other stories in the room.
100%. I love that. That's great. I mean, that's exactly why I asked you. When I shared these ideas online on Threads, there was some discussion in the comments. And I appreciate the discussions because my community is great. Because they get a lot of pushback. And one of the pushbacks, and this is very justified, was, and I agree with this, that if you are somebody who's not used to taking up space, if you're somebody who's not used to being in a place and you're like, you know what, I think I deserve to be here just as much as anybody else. If you're not used to that type of mindset thinking, yes, do go full send internally and say, no, I do deserve to be here. I do deserve to take space. Go full send. Go, just do the thing. So whether it's you being loud, whether it's you being, if it looks like you being arrogant, whatever, go do the thing. Then, listen to feedback. Listen to yourself. Observe. Pay attention. Self-awareness. Because then you can like dial back just a little bit, contextualize yourself in your story wherever you are. So if you're not used to doing that, yes, go for it, 100%. You're going to learn the limits in different ways. People will tell you, but then again, resist the urge to demonize your story. Give yourself permission to fail, whatever that failing was like. Know that failure is not final. Failure is just feedback.
I love that.
Failure is just feedback.
I love that.
Okay, whatever. It's just it's perceptual. And then move forward. And also know that when you are given a seat at the table, the invitation itself is qualification. The invitation to be at the table itself is qualification for you. You do not. I beg you, if you please listen. You do not have to validate yourself in the room. You are in the room. Now step in.
Lean in.
Lean in.
Lean in. Yeah, and we could go on. There's so much that we can unpack. There's so much that we can unpack here. But I want to talk about the way of chai.
Sure.
I want to talk about this. You wrote a book. Yeah. This is a dream of mine, and you did it. And so I'm sitting across my future. Tell me about the way of chai, how it came about, and what inspired you to write that book, and what made you weave together recipes with reflection and leadership, and just trying to get people to understand that chai was a way to really talk about meaning of life. Like, it's not just tea.
Right.
There's powerful lessons that we can grab from it.
Earlier you said that social media helped you to it gave permission for you to kind of lean into your voice, right, in your story. And that's very similar to what happened to me. I did not intend on building a community, but the community happened. And then the more and more people in the community were like, hey, need more of this. I would love to hear more things about this thing or that thing you experience as a third culture kid. Third culture kid is not a new term. It's been around. It's basically a term used to describe people who have lived in multiple parts of the world before the age of 18. And it's a small demographic around the world. So I'm part of that. So I shared some stories. So anyhow, what I did, I started a newsletter, a weekly newsletter.
Wow.
Where I gave myself a creative constraint. If you are wanting to do some creative work, you have to give yourself constraints. There's no such thing as unbridled creativity. The more you have boundaries, the better. So the boundary that I gave myself is every week I'm going to take an aspect of tea making and I'm going to compare it to life, almost like a parable.
Wow.
So I'm just going to do that as kind of an exercise, a mental exercise.
Wow.
And the more I dug into it, the more I realized, wow, there's so much to this drink that I knew, that I did not know, rather. And so I started to write. So I had a series of newsletters in what I called Monday Masala.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So every Monday, it's a masala. Masala is a term used for spices. That's basically what it means, spices. So it's a spice blend of different things.
I love that.
And so I started doing that. The TikToks kept performing well. The videos started to perform well. And then I get invited by a news reporter to do a piece on this for the Orange County Register, the OC Register. So I did a long, full-length interview. I've never done anything like that in my life before. And so that went online. That kind of blew up. And then a literary agent reached out to me, basically said, hey, just heard about you from my friend Deepa Bharat. She was the person who interviewed me.
Wow.
She said that I would love to get in a chat with you. I was like, okay, cool. And so we got in a chat. She told me, just start talking. Tell me how you got here. That's one question. How you got here? And I started yapping. I started sharing stuff. And then after like 35 minutes, she was just like, I think there's a book here. I don't know what book it is, but there's a book here. So give me some writing samples. What have you written so far? And I was like, oh, I have this newsletter.
Oh.
So why don't you? So I sent her like 5 of those.
Wow.
And then she's like, this is good.
Wow.
But not good enough. So she's like, can you do more of this? Can you amp this up at least 15 times? Okay. 15 different issues, but go deeper. Go. And maybe come out and then see if you can come up with an outline or proposal for the book. I was like, oh. In my mind, I was thinking I would write a book, in my later years before I die. Later on. Books are reserved for people who've done stuff, not for me.
Wow.
But again, it's about taking up space, right? So I had to really rewire my thinking a little bit. And I said, okay, fine. Okay. So I got together, blocked myself in a room, got a proposal ready, and gave it to her. And it's like, this is good. So we both pitched it to different publishers. Publisher picked up. And then I was like, whoa, what does this mean? Write the book. You have a year and a half to complete your first manuscript. Go get to work.
Wow.
That's what happened.
Wow.
And there were many times, and this is a lot of people don't know about this, but there were many times during that process where I just wanted to give up.
Yeah.
So many times. Because writing the book it's a marathon. It's a marathon. It requires you to just Honestly, it's boring. It is not sexy. It is not. It is not. It does. You don't get the feedback, immediate feedback. No, you don't. Yeah. What you have to do is get up in the morning in that time, set the timer, whether it's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, go to your room, lock the doors, put the phone away from the room, open your laptop and start writing. Yeah. Just start writing.
Wow.
Start reading and writing. And so that's kind of what happened. I did a last push and the book came out. And even now as I think about it, I was like, this is incredible. And I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of the book. Yeah. And praise God for the communities that have birthed that book.
Yeah.
But that's the origin story for the book, man.
That's amazing. And it's available obviously everywhere.
Yeah. It's called The Way of Chai on Amazon, everywhere books are sold.
Yeah. Yep. That's amazing. I remember when it came out, I got my Audible immediately. Picked it up. So, there's just so much in this conversation we've touched on. And, for me, I've enjoyed just getting to know more of you through this process. But if there's somebody who's like, man, I love this guy and I want to know more, how can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my social media channels, Instagram, TikToks, Cross Culture Kev.
Okay.
And my website, crossculturekev.com. That's probably the best way. Just email me there.
Okay.
And that's the best way to probably connect with me. And also, there's a thing that I do. It's called the Chai Experience.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's just basically I go to schools, corporate spaces. I'll make chai live. It's a live chai session. I'm gonna literally make it in front of you, and as I'm making the chai, I'm gonna teach you other things.
That's amazing.
So it's indirect communication where I'm making the chai and I'm actually going through portions of the book at every stage of the chai making process.
I love that.
And it's a keynote. It can also be customizable as a workshop.
Yeah.
And it's such a fun thing for me because at the end, everybody in attendance will actually get to try.
And I've tried the chai.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. I mean, look, Starbucks, I'm sorry. This is good stuff. The good stuff. So how does somebody get involved with that?
Yep. Again, it's crossculturekev.com.
Okay.
Crossculturekev.com. There's an interest form there.
Yeah.
And go for it from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I loved our conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And we're so grateful for you. We'd love to get your support. If you loved what you heard today, the first thing I want you to do is share it with somebody. Let them know this is a conversation they need to hear. And we're grateful that you got to be a part of this. Also, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. And you can find me on Instagram, I am Saint Fard, at I am Saint Fard. Would love to hear from you. You can DM me. You can connect with me there. Would love to get to know you more. And hit us in the comments. Tell us what you love. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't agree with. Tell us what you thought was incredible. If you have more questions for us, we'd love to answer those. And hit that notification button so that you can know whenever we get our next episode down. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for diving deep with a deep dive.
This is The Deep Dive with Jose St. Fard.